Good evening to all of you. In our weekly Satsang series that is held on every Saturday, today we have with us Srinivas Mulugu. He is the Vice Chairman of Aurobindo Society, Telengana State. Sri Srinivas is fully involved in the teachings of Aurobindo and the Mother for the last 30 years. And is taking very active part in various activities of Sri Aurobindo Society. He is conducting classes, seminars, youth camps, not only in Hyderabad or nearby places, but also in other parts of the country. And he had the blessings to be associated with Sri MP Panditji and Sri Champaklalji, and basically he is a software professional. He has got a corporate career in his background. He was with Co and Nokia. He took his retirement from his corporate career at the age of 44 and taken to this line. We are very fortunate to have him with us. And the topic of today's talk is how to stay connected to the mother. On behalf of Sri Aurobindo Society, Chennai branch, I welcome Srinivas Ji for this meeting, and I also welcome all the participants who have joined with us on this platform. Now I welcome and I request Srinivas Ji to give his talk. Over to you, Srinivas Ji.
Thank you, Shivakumarji. Thank you so much. Welcome everyone on this Saturday afternoon. Before I begin my talk itself, I would like to say a few words about my own association with Shivakumarji. Shivakumarji and I have now been associated with each other with mother's work almost over 7 years or so. And I have had the opportunity to interact with him on a variety of projects, and he is one of those sincere workers of the mother that I am happy to know, and we draw inspiration from him. And I hope that the wonderful work he's initiated in the Tamil Nadu region will be taken up by many of you in support. What he is doing at the state level, each of us can do it at the district level and so on, because fundamentally, as we will see today, our work is a means of also becoming close to the mother and growing spiritually. We will come to that in the course of the talk. So, I have been monitoring and with full awareness the work that Shivakumarji has been doing, giving talks on a variety of subjects. And I hope that many of us will be able to draw inspiration from him and also benefit from the work that he is doing. So, having said that, let us proceed to today's topic of discussion and sharing relating to Mother and Sri Aurobindo's path. While many of us come to this path knowing about Sri Aurobindo, often, particularly those who are in the beginning stages who come to Sri Aurobindo, find Mother enigmatic. The association with Mother is something that is somewhat enigmatic in the sense that it takes time to open up, it takes time to understand, it takes time to develop. And even for us, often coming from the Indian background, Maharshi Sri Aurobindo is what many people use as a name. And yet, opening to the mother is something that takes time. From the point of view of yoga of Mother and Sri Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo had told his disciples as early as in 1926, during the Siddhi day and around that time, November 24th, which is almost upon us, that she is my Shakti. She is the force, the Tapashakti, and she is the Divine Mother to all of us. And Mother herself clarified later on that I am Sri Aurobindo's Shakti and nobody else's. And in his small book, The Mother, which is barely around 50, 60 pages, a small book, which I am sure many of you have studied. If not, I would encourage each of you to go through that small book, The Mother, in detail, preferably with some guidance from somebody who is experienced, because that book is is a scripture for this path of integral yoga, and I call it the magic book because it really opens us to the Shakti of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. In that book, Sri Aurobindo refers to the Mother in three different ways: the individual, the universal, and the transcendental. And many times it is difficult for us to understand these voices of the Mother. In fact, there was an episode in the ashram history where one of the attendants of the Mother, while she was talking to the Mother, she said, "Mother, what is this individual, universal, and transcendental? We know you personally. We have seen you, we see you, we are with you, we assist you, we serve you. So what is this universal Mother that Sri Aurobindo is talking about? What is this universal form of yours?" And then it is said that Mother stepped two paces forward. She took 2 steps forward. In the place where she was standing before, there was a column of white light. This is how the Mother revealed her universal aspect. In fact, Sri Kapali Shastriyarji, who was one of the early disciples in Sri Aurobindo Ashram, many times when the Mother was walking on the terrace, saw a column of white light, a flame of white light, he called it. So, understanding Mother is central to the path of integral yoga. It is something that is the golden key. It doesn't matter how many books we read, it doesn't matter how many talks we attend, it doesn't matter how much work we do in the name of the Mother, it doesn't matter how many pilgrimages we make to Pondicherry. Unless the door is opened with this golden key of the Mother, it is difficult for us to make progress on integral yoga. It is difficult for us to really justify saying that we are devotees of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. In this context, the first step that is often discussed is how do you open to the Mother's force? How do you open to the Mother? Most of what we will do today is read lines from Sri Aurobindo on various aspects of how to relate to the Mother. And then we will try to understand how to formulate our own equation. So regarding opening to the Mother, how to open to the Mother, different people ask the question in different ways, but there are 4 or 5 answers that I have here to share with you. Sri Aurobindo says, aspiration, quietude, widening of oneself to receive, and rejection of all that tries to shut you to the divine. Another answer, by aspiration, by consent of the being to the divine force, by the descent and working of that force. We will see further what the descent of the force is. We will also see what is the force itself, if time permits. And then, how do you open to the Mother? Another place Sri Aurobindo says, by faith and surrender. And at another place, he says, by quieting the mind and the vital, by concentrating more on the Mother, and by calling of her force to enter and work in our being. Yet in another place, Sri Aurobindo gives a very simple method of how to open to the Mother. It is by constant remembrance that the being is prepared for the full opening. So the idea is that there are many methods of initiation in spiritual paths. In some places, in the traditional yogas, it is said there are 24 methods of initiation by the Guru. Sometimes the initiation is in the form of a small homagunda and a small homa that is done. Sometimes it could be by mantra diksha. A mantra is given to the disciple and a person is supposed to repeat that mantra and do japa. Sometimes there is a tying of a sacred thread by the Guru to the disciple. Sometimes the Guru touches the disciple in a certain way as to activate the latent energies and open the spiritual channels. Sometimes the touch can be here, sometimes the touch can be here. There are many methods of initiation. In fact, in some parts it is also said Chakshu Diksha. The Guru looks at the disciple and gazes into the eye. Many methods, many paths. In our path, it is very, very simple. In fact, in the integral yoga and in the path of Sri Aurobindo and Mother, they have discarded many of the traditional ritualistic aspects. Sometimes people ask, "Sir, how do we know Mother accepted us?" The answer given is that once you accept the Mother, you're automatically accepted. And when you follow the path, most people know from here that Mother is acting in their life by personal experience. It can be in small things, it can be in big things. In fact, sometimes it is the way of working of the Mother is so spontaneous that one immediately doubts, oh, it could have been a coincidence, but often it is not. And sometimes when youngsters come and the youth work with us, they try to test the Mother several times, whether it is Mother who has accepted them. Once we look at the photograph of a Mother, once we ask her to start playing an active role in our life, it is the experience of many, many, many people over decades that they know that Mother's force has taken charge of their life. There is no room for doubt. One has to be careful about how many times you're going to test the Mother. The nature of doubt is to go on doubting. And doubt is corrosive. Corrosion means, when on a metal you pour water or acid, it corrodes the metal. Even the metal is so hard that little drop can even put a hole into the metal. Doubt is like that. One can always ask the Mother to help, to clarify and all that. But if one goes on doing it for years, then one is wasting Mother's energy and our own time and life. I know personally a very successful person who is in vice presidential cadre in the corporate world, now known to me for a decade, and the doubts have been going on for one full decade. 10 years has passed. Not only about the Mother, it is about God, it is about existence of God. Is He there? Is He not there? There is no end to it, my friends. Somewhere one has to listen to the heart. Somewhere one has to recognize the energy of the Mother, the action of the Mother, the force of the Mother. The way Mother and Sri Aurobindo act is not through miracles. It is through what seems like a natural happening. We have to recognize with our heart. In the small book, the mother, Sri Aurobindo says, don't try to understand the mother by your mind, because you will not recognize her even if she is standing before you. Instead, try to feel her with your heart. So when we talk about opening to the mother, when we talk about connecting to the mother, when we talk about receiving mother inside us, we should use our inner eye, antah chakshu, the inner eye. And from that inner eye, we can recognize the mother. And how do we open to the mother? We say, okay, mother, start helping us. How do we receive her grace? How do we receive her force? So Sri Aurobindo has given 4 or 5 important aspects. First, aspiration. We must want it. Second, we must allow it, the consent of the being. We should have some faith that when we call, she answers. Next is something very important. We should develop a certain calmness and quietude inside of our mind and emotions so that we can allow the mother to act. When we are restless, when we are agitated, when we are constantly struggling, when we are in a turmoil emotionally, it is difficult for any spiritual force to act through us. When we are very disturbed, it is very difficult for any spiritual force to act through us. In a small book, Basis of Yoga, or Letters on Yoga, Volume 2, which is a bigger book, in the chapter called Foundation of Sadhana, means the first step, the very, very beginning of sadhana, spiritual life, Sri Aurobindo says, peace and quiet are the foundation of spiritual sadhana. So, to receive mother's force, to accept mother in our life, we can only do it in a condition of peace and quiet. We have to learn to develop that peace and quiet. Then we are able to open to the mother. There are difficulties, I'm sure. The question was asked of Sri Aurobindo. What are the difficulties in opening to the mother? To be open is simply to be so turned to the mother that her force can work in you without anything refusing or obstructing that action. So, first of all, we should be capable of letting the force act without obstructing it. So, what are the obstructions? He describes them. If the mind is shut up in its own ideas and refuses to allow her to bring in the light and the truth, constantly thinking, oh, if I pray, mother should act like this, mother should act like that, this person should come and apologize to me, that circumstance. We have a lot of preconceived notions. We have a set of ideas how mother should act. Those become the obstructions for mother acting through us. That is the mind. Then the emotions. If the vital clings to its desires and does not admit the true initiative and impulses of mothers that the mother's powers brings, I want it to happen like this, and I want mother to make it happen like this. Mother does not work according to our mental ideas and emotional preferences. When we ask mother to work, when we ask mother to open us, she will work for our highest spiritual progress, not to satisfy our mental ideas or emotional preferences. So these become obstructions for mother to act through us. But Sri Aurobindo also knows that we are not yogis. He understands we have limited capacity. So he says, openness is not always complete from the first. A part of the being opens, other parts of the consciousness remain closed or half open only. One has to aspire till all is open. Even with the best and most powerful sadhak, the opening takes time. It is a progressive opening, gradual opening. How does it happen? Constant aspiration. That is important. So it takes time. If you really want to know what are your difficulties, what are the problems you have, it's very simple. Observe your pattern of behavior and recognize those patterns. Most of us, our pattern of behavior does not change sometimes for 5, 10, 20, 25 years. The same pattern repeats. If somebody says something harsh, the response is in the same way. If something doesn't go the way we want, the response is in the same way. The patterns don't change. If you have personal difficulty in identifying those patterns, because those patterns are obstructing us, you can ask your children. If you have teenage children, they will tell you 2 pages of patterns. You can talk to your spouse. So, these are ways to recognize and then invoke the mother's help in dissolving those patterns. My dear friends, we are very lucky if we are able to recognize our patterns, because sometimes people don't change for 50 years. From the age of 30 to the age of 80, many people go through life with their eyes closed. If we have come to the mother, we can invoke mother's light to dissolve our patterns, and that is how we can progress. So let us be grateful and let us pray to the mother that we can open to her force and grace. After we open a little bit and as we make progress, it is important we develop some awareness of the vibrations of the mother. You know, many of you staying particularly in Tamil Nadu may have had opportunities to go to Sri Aurobindo's room and mother's room. Recognize the vibrations that are there in Sri Aurobindo's room and mother's room. It is said that when you feel the vibrations and the energies, Sri Aurobindo's is vast, wide, calm, detached. The Himalayan presence is how Sri Aurobindo is described. The mother's energy is very different. It is dynamic, full of force, always moving, constantly energetic, rapid motion. Those are the vibrations that are said of the mother. In the beautiful book 12 Years with Sri Aurobindo, if you read that book, you can see the clear contrast of how Nirodbaranji describes Sri Aurobindo's presence and mother's presence. She is the Shakti, he is the Shiva. He observes and sanctions, she executes. Somewhere in our own working with the mother, we should be able to gradually develop a capacity to feel her presence, to make spiritual progress, to make mother act in our life. It is very important that we try and make an effort to feel her presence. The mother's presence is one of the most important phrases of the life of a sadhak or the life of a devotee of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. So how does one feel the mother's presence? How do you feel mother's presence? There are several ways, but one thing that you see when you read Sri Aurobindo, I will point out, many places he says something. I read two, three paragraphs of what he said. Not 2-3 paragraphs, 2-3 letters he has written, brief sentences. There is no method in this yoga except to concentrate, preferably in the heart, and call the presence and power of the mother to take up the being and by the working of her force, transform the consciousness. It is by constant remembrance that the being is prepared for the full opening. By the opening of the heart, the mother's presence begins to be felt, and by the opening of her power above, the force of the higher consciousness comes down into the body. As the mother told you, your concentration should be in the heart center. Through the heart, you will get the closer and closer touch of the mother. It is quite right and part of the right consciousness in sadhana that you should feel drawn in your heart towards the mother. So, one way of feeling mother's presence is to feel the mother in your heart. Meditate in your heart region. Visualize your favorite picture of the mother. Feel her there. And when we do that again and again and again and again, gradually there is an opening. There is a constant awareness of the presence. And one might feel that whenever there is a difficulty, instead of the mind agitating and trying to solve the problem, as a habit happens, next time there is a big problem, you don't get agitated, you go to your heart because you know the mother is seated there. You know you can feel the mother's presence there. This is what it is to be connected to the mother. This is how we all being her small children, we all being the ignorant, people, devotees that we are struggling to evolve. This is how one can connect to the Divine Mother. Visualize her seated in her heart. Visualize her face. Visualize her feet. All of that in the heart region. And if we can do it every day for 10 minutes in the morning or 10 minutes in the evening, well and good. If we can do it even for a minute or two during the day, that is wonderful. But a practice has to happen. First of all, we should know, and then we should do. And if one is able to make a beginning and one is able to practice it, it becomes a constant, natural way of being. Next time, instead of having an ego-based reaction, we have a mother-based reaction. This is how we can become true followers and devotees of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. So how do we make this permanent? The Divine Mother is everywhere and at all times with you. If one opens and becomes conscious, then one can feel her presence. It is because the nature is ignorant and full of itself and its desires that one cannot feel the presence. If one turns from self and desires and lives inwardly and outwardly for the divine, then one begins to feel the divine presence. Another passage, the constant presence of the mother comes by practice. You have to learn to go inward. You have to learn to go inward. Stop living in the external things only. Quiet the mind and aspire to become aware of the mother's workings in you. This is how Sri Aurobindo has guided the sadhaks and disciples and devotees. We may think that, well, that is fine if somebody is living in the ashram or somebody has seen the mother, but Sri Aurobindo doesn't stop there. He says, the mother's presence can be felt through the photographs by one who regards it with devotion towards her. Many, many, many hundreds and thousands of devotees have seen, felt, and visualized mother's presence in her photographs. Thousands of them over the last few decades. The presence is very much there where her photograph is there. We just have to look into the eyes and invoke her, and she is present. So please do not think that, oh, mother was there until 1973, we were born afterwards, or we were not there in Pondicherry. No. If anything, even somebody like Nirodha and Nolinida have said that when she left her body, her consciousness became more active. So her presence is very vivid, her action is very vivid, and she is very much with us. The key part is to be calm. And another aspect of working in the heart region is gradually to open the psychic being. For those of you who have heard many talks and read many books, you may recognize that psychic being is in the heart region, and it is one of the most important parts of sadhana to bring the psychic being forward. One has to just work on trying to gradually concentrate in the heart region and go deeper and deeper. And Sri Aurobindo says, if you feel the mother's presence for the greater part of the day, it means your psychic being, it means that it is your psychic being that is active and feels like that. So as you concentrate here, the psychic being also has a chance to open and come forward. The best way to live in the psychic being, for that is always surrendered to the mother and can lead the others in the right way. So as we concentrate in the heart, as we are able to open more and more, we are able to bring the psychic forward and feel the mother's presence. So one, the opening to the mother by praying to her, by asking her to be active. Second, to concentrate in the heart region and gradually visualize the mother there, mother's feet there, mother's face there. Whenever we get a chance, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, whenever you get a chance. But the key is to constantly have that interchange. Sometimes, particularly among men whose mind is more active, there is a mental devotion. But Sri Aurobindo writes that the devotion that we have for the mother should also have a heart and psychic element. We should be able to offer ourselves from our heart, not just the mind. To understand the difference between a mental devotion and psychic devotion is very important. Otherwise, one can keep praying with the mind, reading with the mind, understanding with the mind, trying to analyze with the mind. But somewhere the feeling and the emotion and the surrender have to come from the heart region. The heart region opens more naturally among women. The mother herself has said that women have somewhat of a faster and easier development of the psychic compared to men. So this is something that many women who are a part of today's satsang can take heart in. Then there is another aspect of coming close to the mother through work. So how do we open to the mother? It is a very important part of integral yoga to work for the mother, to work with the mother, to let the mother work through us. Selfless work for all of us is a very important part. I see many people who are in the 60s and 70s, they say, sir, our whole life was spent in earning a living. Today we are retired and we really, everything one does can be offered to the mother as work. Whether it is cooking, whether it is cleaning the house, whether it is doing a business, whether it is whatever you are doing, it is an offering to the mother. Provided we connect with her and we remember her at the time of beginning the work, at the time of duration of the work, at the time of completing the work. Sri Aurobindo talks about 3 stages. He says the first stage is when works with the outer energy, but there is an inner consciousness supporting which relies wholly on the mother. We do whatever we are doing, but we say, Mother, I'm doing this for you. Mother, I would like you to do this through me. This. The second stage is when the inner consciousness and force becomes active and it uses the outer instruments. So the role has changed. As we are working from an inner consciousness of calm and peace and spiritual surrender, all of those, and using the mind and the emotions and the body to work. And the third stage is when all is the mother's force that is working. Our surrender is so complete. Again, in the small book, The Mother, in chapter 5, Sri Aurobindo says, as we surrender, we recognize her force acting through us. And eventually we arrive at a stage where we become being of her being, force of her force, consciousness of her consciousness, ananda of her ananda. So that is the perfect stage. It takes time. But as one takes a step back and works for the mother, one begins to feel a double consciousness. One, an inner being within which is always dedicated spontaneously and silently full of devotion. And then the outer being through which the work is done. A certain calmness and a certain settled approach. And then we are working. Work is a part of the yoga and it gives the best opportunity for calling down the presence, the light, and the power into the vital and its activities. It also increases the field and the opportunity of surrender. One has to continuously think of Mother doing the work. Mother has clearly told, even when the ashram was in full swing, there was a very interesting episode where, and the ashram was setting up various departments. The department to set up a small soap unit was being undertaken. And there was a very big industrialist who had a lot of relationships with the government. And he said, oh, Mother, soap unit, small thing, I will get it done for you. And then during his visits to Delhi, he was trying to get it done through, those days everything needed a license. So he was trying to get this license. And he was an industrialist who had set up factories, so he knows. But after many, many attempts, he wasn't able to get the license for a small soap unit. Then he went to the mother and he said, Mother, I can't understand. For so many decades, I've got so many permissions, but I have not been able to get this small permission for the soap unit. She said, so you think you are the one who is doing all this work? Then he realized, outside you can do whatever you want, ego-based work and all of that you can do. But when you're working for the mother, unless the surrender to the mother's force is deep, the fruits will not manifest and the ego becomes a bottleneck. And he realized, he was a devotee, of course, he realized, no, Mother, it is you who is working through me. And that is how some of these things get resolved. It is important to remember that. Ego-based reactions have no place when we are doing work for the mother, or when we are asking Mother to do the work. Now, some people also say, when they read books of integral yoga, when they read, for example, the opening of the psychic, Mother said somewhere, you have to start the work, but sometimes the opening of the psychic can take 30 years. How many of us can say we are going to work on psychic being for 30 years? It looks impossible. Then when one reads Life Divine and we see higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, illumined mind, overmind, supermind, and you're like, mind, how many minds? How do I do all this work? And when you talk of surrender, physical surrender, vital surrender, mental surrender, it looks like we can't do any of this. How can we manage to do all this yoga by ourselves? Then Sri Aurobindo has something interesting. He says, those who do work for the mother in all sincerity are prepared by the work itself for the right consciousness. Those who do work for the mother in all sincerity are prepared by the work itself for the right consciousness. As we surrender to the mother, if we can give her 1 hour in a week for selfless work, 1 day in a week for selfless work. Sir, what can I do? I don't know Mother Sri Aurobindo. I can't give lectures. I can't set up a center. You know, start where you are located and try to do her selfless work wherever you are, in whatever field. Maybe with your children, maybe with your relatives, maybe with your neighbors, maybe with your community, maybe with your school, maybe in your business, wherever we are. Take mother's name and try to introduce mother to somebody. When somebody is in difficulty, ask them to pray to the mother. When somebody is having difficulty in health, give them a blessings packet and tell them you will, whatever you can do as a selfless work. Some of the people, they have done a simple thing. They keep some books of the mother, and wherever they go, they distribute books, small, small books. For 20 years, they're only distributing books, selfless work. Anything we can take up without our personal benefit and do selflessly is mother's work, and it is that work that prepares us for this yoga. I'm sure there is something we all can do, something each of us can do when we are able to work for the mother. So we have covered 3 important topics today. It is around 50 minutes now, 5:20. We talked about opening to the mother. We talked about feeling the mother's presence in our heart, and how when we remember mother more and more, gradually we are able to feel her presence constantly. We have talked about psychic opening. How do we open ourselves in the heart region, and gradually how does the psychic come forward and help us feel constantly the presence of the mother? And then we talked about how to work for the mother, or how to think of the mother during our work, and how to surrender, how to have peace and quiet. These are some of the things that we have done. I will share with you one important last thing, and then we can maybe take 5 minutes or 10 minutes of questions and answers. Sri Aurobindo also gives 3 methods to call the mother. The first, he says, you can meditate on the mother in the heart and call on her. Remember her, dedicate and offer to her all your life, your thoughts, your actions. Concentrate on the call in your heart till you feel an opening to her. Or some inner contact. So he's saying very simple, concentrate on the call in your heart. This is the first method. The second method, he says, if you like, you can make a japa of her name. You can call her to purify your being and change your nature. So you can keep chanting mother, 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 ma, 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 Srimata, Srimata, whatever comes to you in your language. The third thing is to concentrate to call down from above her calm and peace, and then her power and light and ananda. It is always there above your head. Sri Aurobindo says, we all know our mind exists here, our emotions exist here, but Sri Aurobindo says there is a peace that is available here to all of us. It is a part of the mother's consciousness and force that is there. If we just call that peace to descend, it can come into our being, and mother's presence can establish itself in us. So these 3 methods. What are the methods? 1, concentrate in your heart and keep calling her there. Second, while whatever you're doing, you can keep chanting her name. And third, you can call down the mother's peace and force. And all the 3 can be done. So these are the 3 methods in which Sri Aurobindo has spoken about invoking the mother and calling her presence. So what we will do is we'll kind of stop here, and then if there are any questions or comments, we can definitely take up. We have 5-7 minutes. I will hand it over back to Shivakumarji.
Yeah, thank you, Srinivas ji. Any questions are there? You please, participants are welcome to ask.
If you feel comfortable, you can also ask the questions in Tamil, and Shivakumarji can translate it for us also. So that is, language is not a barrier.
Hello, this is Usha. I'm really not asking a question, but I would like to convey my appreciation for the wonderful way in which you have delivered this. It was so, I mean, we could make out that the mother's force and peace is with you. The very calm and a very clear way in which you explained it. It's wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you,
Srinivas.
Ushaji. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Very simple things you have explained to us. Very important tips you have given. Thanks a lot. Mother's blessing for you, sir.
Okay, so when we are trying to concentrate and call the mother's name, if there's so much of disturbance from outside, what do we do? Very often it happens. Okay, I decide today I'm going to only concentrate, call on her. But then there is, I don't know, maybe the hostile. There's a lot of disturbance just when you want to do it.
Yes, it is a common experience that when we take a resolve to do something, that day only a lot of things happen. And it comes with practice. Initially, perhaps setting aside a little time is helpful till one is able to recognize that vibration and peace. Initial practice will take some time. Once that initial practice is done, one should be able to feel that whenever one is, all one has to do is just find a little bit of 30 seconds or 1 minute or 2 minutes during the day and kind of close one's eyes and reconnect if it's a particularly difficult day. Two, three small techniques that I can share with you that friends have found helpful. Breathing deeply for a few minutes and reconnecting to the mother while that is happening is something that people have felt useful. If it's a particularly strongly disturbing day, then just kind of, gently massaging here or just closing one's eyes and gently pressing on the eyeballs and kind of bringing our attention back to this region, slightly inside, and breathing allows us to withdraw our consciousness into ourselves. So these are combining the physical often helps in bringing our consciousness back into us. What happens often, particularly when we are on a very difficult day, or even on good occasions, like when we go to a marriage or when we go to a family function, also, our consciousness goes and spreads like this. All the vibrations and all those things invariably start affecting our inner being. So, somewhere, even in good occasions, we should be able to withdraw our consciousness momentarily and re establish that peace and quiet inside. That can help us a little bit in trying to re establish our connection with the mother.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Srinivas ji. Can you please tell something of your experience with Sri Champaklarji or Sri MP Pandit?
Ah, it is a Sri. I will briefly mention about Sri Champaklalji, whose darshan I have had the privilege of having several times. When I was barely a teenager, um, they say the light of the soul radiates through the eyes. when we used to go and take blessings of Champaklalji, who at that time was already in silence, what one can remember are his radiant eyes. It is like there is the power of the sun with the love and smooth softness of the moon. It is the radiance of the sun with the softness of the moon. That is, I mean, those eyes I remember very vividly. And many of us who were going to Sri Aurobindo's room for darshan would pass and would take his blessings. I would see in that line that was taking Sri Champaklalji's blessings, grown men who would not know who he was, but when they stood in that line, they would just have tears flowing down because such was the radiance of his presence. Very powerful and enigmatic and beautiful, radiant personality. There were some of my friends and very close friends who happened to travel with Champaklalji through Himalayas. Unfortunately, I was too young to realize how wonderful that opportunity was, and I was a student, so I did not go. But they've had many beautiful experiences with Champaklalji. Sri Madhav Panditji was again, two different instruments of the mother did such glorious work in their own ways. Sri Madhav Panditji, as many of you would have known, had traveled far and wide. When he was when he was first invited outside to travel, and he had never left the ashram for decades, almost 4 decades, he had not left the ashram. So Nolinida said, let them hear the authentic voice, because MP Panditji, to many people in the ashram itself, represented authentic manifestation of Sri Aurobindo's yoga at that point in time in the 1970s when he started his travel. People say, those who know him well, I am nobody to say this, but people have said that his own yoga had brought him to the levels of the overmental state. That is what they say. To me, he was like an affectionate grandfather. He would always say, you are mother's child, keep coming to our house. And many times I would go to his house in the evening. We did not know how to meditate. We would just somehow try to reach in time and sit there and close our eyes, and naturally we didn't know how to meditate. But he was so giving and affectionate. And whatever problems we had, we were fortunate enough to receive a response from him. As a student, I would write my little problems, and he was very prompt. The letters would be prompt, very brief, and always he would sign with mother's blessings, with mother's blessings. So these were my memories of my childhood, and very, very gentle, very, very beautiful Siddha Purushas of our path that I had an opportunity to interact with. This is what I have received from them that I know. But what they gave me, what they have transmitted or planted into me, only they should know, because I was too young. I was only a teenager and barely into my 20s at that time, early 20s, 21, 22, from 17 to 22. This was the 5 years that I interacted with them, and the memories are very vivid, and their vibrations are still very vivid, I must say.
Thank you, Srinivasji. Any other questions are there? Otherwise, we will wind up.
Sir, shall I?
Yes.
I'll just finish it. It's a blessing to hear. It's such a blessed feeling, sir, to hear all the sharings. And sir told that we have to go inner and listen to the heart. That is one thing. And hearing all these things, we come to realize we have got lots of work to mend ourselves. So there are obviously no questions. That is there. But one thing I have yes, sir. We are going in your all these things I'm not knowing, but just to know, I'm asking, sir. What is this widening of consciousness?
The widening of consciousness, yes. Um, Often, our consciousness is conditioned by our senses, our or how our reactions are to our senses and to our senses. And very often, we live in a very narrow spectrum of consciousness. There is a certain lower limit of consciousness and a higher limit of consciousness within which most of us oscillate. When we come to the spiritual path, the one area of our work is consciousness. And purification of consciousness means trying to realize what our limitations are, what our gravity is, where are the areas where we go down, and try to invoke the Mother's light and force to purify that. The widening of consciousness is trying to understand our spectrum and increase the width, and in a way, it is moving away from our narrow individuality into a wider space. So, how does it work? I'll give you an example at the mind, because most of us are mental beings. Now, let us say I'm driving a car and I turn the corner and the other car driver did not see and he has come and hit me. What is my natural reaction? I would say I would get down, and the typical reaction is, oh, could you not see I was coming? You did not give your indicator, and this and that. This is my way I naturally react. Now, let us say the person who gets down from the other car happens to be my cousin brother. What would my reaction? Will I react the same way that I react to a stranger? Normally, I don't. Oh, Anna, what happened? Where were you going? It's okay. The dent is small. I will get it fixed and I will move away. So, what is the difference between the first and the second? In the first, my ego was restricted to myself. In the second instance, my ego had expanded to embrace my family. This is a widening of consciousness. Similarly, as we work with Mother and Sri Aurobindo at the mental level, we should be able to embrace other people, other ideas, other opinions, and develop plasticity to be able to expand our consciousness. This is how we widen our consciousness at the mental level. For example, Sri Aurobindo says, you should be able to hold two opposing ideas in your mind and yet be able to synthesize it. This is widening of consciousness. Similarly, there is widening of emotions. When you are able to bring in more and more peace, a small emotional incident does not elicit a very strong reaction from you. If you are a person who is narrow and egoistic and very small in your emotions, immediately you have an ego-based reaction, as you saw in the example. But if your emotions are broadened and widened and there is a peace, then you are able to absorb the emotional shocks without having a strong reaction. So this is how, in the yoga of Sri Aurobindo, we have to expand our mental consciousness, our physical consciousness, our subtle physical consciousness, our vital consciousness. We are gradually asked to expand it and receive Mother's force and light into us.
Thank you very much.
I think we can wind up.
Thank you, Shivakumarji, for the opportunity to come and speak to our friends.
Thank you very much, Srinivas ji. Very beautiful and very absorbing talk you have given. You have stated that Mother is the Shakti of Sri Aurobindo, and understanding the Mother is a central key, a golden key for our sadhana. What is required on our part is aspiration, quietude, widening of consciousness, and rejection of all that stands in our way. And what Sri Aurobindo has said is that by constant remembrance, the being is open to receive the Mother's force. And coming to the Mother is very easy. And once we accept the Mother, we are automatically accepted by the mother. And the mother will start playing a very active role in our life. What is required is that we should not allow the doubt to get into our mind that corrodes our being, and constant aspiration, the consent of our being, faith, quietude within, and these are all required as preliminary condition for opening to the mother. And what we should do is that we should remove from our mind its own ideas and our own vital preferences, and we should begin to feel the mother's presence in our heart. By doing so, what happens is that there is a gradual awakening of the psychic presence in us. Once we begin to open more and more to the mother, what happens is that all our outward reactions, instead of being ego-based, they become mother-based reactions. And we should remember Sri Aurobindo's words that more than the mental devotion, we should gradually move towards psychic devotion. And the best way to open to the mother is working for the mother with true surrender. Any selfless work offered to the mother gradually prepares our being in the sadhana. And three methods Sri Aurobindo has advocated, which you have elucidated. One is concentrating in the heart center. Secondly, taking the japa of her name. Thirdly, calling of her force from above, her light from above, her power and ananda from above. Make it descend into our being and make it work in our being. These are all the things, many things you have said, but all are each and every point you have mentioned is something we have to introspect and we have to work upon it. Thank you very much on behalf of Sri Aurobindo Society, Chennai, and on behalf of all the devotees who are assembled here. I thank you very much, and I welcome you again and again to participate in our program. Thank you very much. I also thank all the participants who have joined in today's program. Thank you very much. We'll end today's event with the prayer music.
Battery 100%.
Bhagavati Srinivas Om Namo Bhagavati Srinivas Bhagavati Sri Aurobindo, Bhagavate Sri
Thank you, sir.
Gratitude, Ma. Thank you, sir.
Gratitude, Ma. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.